Wanders. So I know for some people this is just another day, and some might even argue that this is just another commercialized day, but I totally get that if you're single, especially if you're newly single, this day can be quite hard, you know, a little bit challenging. And I have to be honest, when I first got my heart broken, I thought this day was challenging as well, because it is like a constant reminder, kind of like a slap in the face that you're single, that you're not together. And so that's why this video today is another self-love with San episode, all in a theme of being single and why you should be happy that you're single. So I'm going to do my skincare together with you guys, and so we have a fun little Valentine's Day, Galentine's Day pamper sesh. So if you haven't gotten ready already, or maybe it's the evening for you right now whilst you're watching this, then maybe you can get unready with me. You know, grab your skincare, do a little pamper sesh, treat yourself, because you deserve it, especially today. So Valentine's Day, when you're together, when you're in a relationship, is of course a really fun day, even though, again, I know that some people say, you know, it's really commercialized, but you know, it's fun to receive cards and, you know, roses and chocolates. I mean, who doesn't love that? Let's be real. But as soon as I was single, I started looking at this day from a different perspective. And it was not even the Valentine's traditions that I once shared that I really missed. It was more so the glorification of being together, the glorification in the media of, you know, it's almost like you are supposed to be in a relationship. That's like the norm. And I totally get it. Obviously, love is such a beautiful thing. There is a big reason why almost all art is about love, whether it's paintings or music or books or movies. Like, somebody on TikTok the other day recently pointed out that I can't remember the creator, otherwise I would have tagged them or named them, but it was a guy, and he pointed out that even all Disney movies have some sort of love plot in them, and these movies are targeted towards children. So even from a very young age, you're kind of brought up with this idea that the end goal is always love. Like, life is this race and you face all these challenges like in the Disney movies, and then ultimately you have this happily ever after, and that happily ever after usually includes a partner. And so I couldn't help but feel this kind of pressure, like I was supposed to be together with somebody, like that was my whole purpose in life. Like, also when you look at just us as humans biologically, maybe we are supposed to reproduce, like maybe that's the reason why we're on this earth. And I know this sounds really crazy, like there's no other life purpose that you can follow, like there's no other path, but it kind of feels like that when you really let all those images and videos and movies get into your head. But through these years of heartbreak, through these years of, you know, kind of suffering and dealing with, you know, the traumas that I have and the challenges that I faced in life, I was like, you know what, maybe I'm not supposed to be in love whatsoever. Maybe I am supposed to be single, at least at this point in my life. Maybe this is the kind of era in my life where I'm supposed to discover who I really am without anybody else. You know, maybe I can benefit from being single. And with that kind of insight, with that kind of perspective on life, life became a lot easier. If you constantly think of something as a challenge, then it becomes so hard to live with that certain thing. Like, you think that, you know, your life sucks and, you know, your job sucks and you don't want to work a 9-to-5, but you are not changing it. There's no way you can get out of this job, just like how there is a way I could go into a relationship, but it is hard, you know. It's not like there all of a sudden is the perfect guy standing in front of my door. Like, this is something you have to work towards, just like finding another job or getting a degree. Like, it's all part of a journey. But if you don't like the point where you are at right now and you actively hate it, then it becomes so extremely hard to live with it. So I started changing my perspective and being like, you know what, being single is a blessing. And in case you need it, I have come up with a little list of reasons of why it is a blessing, so that every time you feel down, or you know, you feel like on a day like today, like Valentine's Day, it sucks to be single, you just pull up this video and you look at these things that I said. Maybe they don't make sense at all in your head, maybe they do, but I hope that they resonate and that they can help you go through days like today. So number one, time. Time is obviously the most precious thing we have on this earth, and our time is limited, we all know that. But when you're in a relationship, it requires so much time and dedication and effort. And when you really love somebody, that's totally fine. Like, that's okay. That's perfectly fine, because you are committed to this person, and it's actually nice that you want to put in the effort, then you know that you're dating the right person. But now that you're single, you might be able to put that time into other things. And I noticed that, you know, especially right now, being in my late 20s, this is kind of the time to take the time to be selfish. And I know that sounds really bad, because yes, I do want to give my time to other people, I do want to be there for other people, but right now it also feels really nice, it feels like a blessing once again, to fully focus on myself and to take the time to focus on my work, to take the time to focus on practicing self-love, to take the time to travel, for example. Solo traveling is something that I have been doing for a little while now. And the first time I went somewhere all by myself was to Cape Town, when I got signed with a modeling agency there, and I lived there for 3 months. And I traveled there all by myself in that plane. It was like 12 hours or something like that. So it was a huge journey, especially for me at that age, but it also felt so liberating. Somehow I just felt so empowered knowing that I could take on a huge journey like that and do it on my own, and that I didn't need a man to carry my suitcases down a flight of stairs if the elevator wasn't working, or that I didn't need a man to guide me through a city that I did not know at all, or that I did not need a man to, you know, whatever. It's just so empowering to do things by yourself. And since then, I have traveled a lot by myself. Or wait, actually, I'm lying. Cape Town was not the first, well, it was the first big travel, but the first time I really was, you know, by myself all alone was when I moved to Paris to model there. But, you know, Paris is very, very close by if you compare it to Cape Town, South Africa. But anyways, that was the first time I was on my own. But, you know, Cape Town, that was like a long plane ride, a long journey, and a completely different culture. Like, that was such a culture shock. But anyways, I felt really empowered, even though it was really hard at the time and I cried a lot. It felt really good to do that by myself. And so after that, I traveled a ton also to South Korea, as you guys know, and other travels within Europe. I totally recommend you, if you have not tried traveling solo, just do it. You will meet so many more people when you're by yourself than when you're with somebody else. People come up to you way more often. It's easier to come up to somebody else. It's easier to, you know, start a conversation, just say like, oh, I don't understand this, can you help me with that? And people are so much kinder than you could have ever imagined. Like, sometimes I have this idea of people, which is really bad, because I didn't used to be like this whatsoever. I almost totally forget to do my skincare because I'm talking so much, but this is a Kahi stick, by the way. But sometimes I had this idea of people like, oh, you can't trust people. And sometimes I even see videos of people on TikTok and they're like, oh, I have like a present for you. And I know for a fact that if somebody would say that to me, I would be so caught off guard, and I would almost be like, oh, this is like a trick. This is a scam. Somebody is trying to steal something from me and tries to distract me with like this present, so I definitely shouldn't accept it. But more often than others, I actually noticed that people are so kind and so friendly. I was just in Athens, Greece, also all by myself, and the people there honestly, everybody that I met was so extremely helpful. And for example, the cab drivers, they told me so much about the city. And I think that when you're traveling with somebody else and you're sitting in the cab together, taxi drivers, if you don't ask them for it actively, they're less inclined to start a conversation with you. And you know, things like that make solo traveling amazing. Then next up, self-love. It might be such a cliche, but you cannot love somebody else if you don't love yourself. And I found this out the hard way because, you know, when you don't love yourself, and especially when you don't respect yourself, it is so hard to set boundaries. And in order to have a good, fulfilling relationship, the two of you need to set boundaries. The two of you need to have so much respect for one another, but also for yourself, that you are willing to not only sacrifice things for the other person, but also sacrifice the relationship if it's not serving you. And this is something that's really hard, but I think that if you love the other person more than yourself, you're gonna accept things that usually you wouldn't if it weren't for that person. And I don't think that's good. I think that you should have your own morals, your own values in mind, and stick to those, because they are way more important than anybody else, you know. And to just stick with the cliches, two halves can't make a whole when it comes to love. And I think that if you don't fully love yourself and you haven't gone through that self-love journey and fully accepted yourself yet, then you're only going to be a burden to the other person. So even if you think that it's selfless to love that other person more, you're actually, in my opinion, gonna hurt them more by, you know, not being fully committed to yourself. Let's try out these masks. I think that the hard part about this is that, you know, oftentimes I can't open this. Oh wait, I got it. I wanted to grab my Hello Kitty scissors, but luckily I don't need them, or luckily it doesn't even matter. But I always want to rip things open. It is such a bad habit, but I always think like, oh, I don't need scissors. See, that's another form of like, I can do it. I don't need a man. I don't even need scissors. I can rip it open myself. Yeah. What I wanted to say is that I think that often people who don't completely accept themselves yet often pick arguments, start fights, and I think this just comes out of their own insecurity. And so that is another reason why I think self-love is so important. I think when you are really insecure about who you are, you're gonna project that on the other person, and usually, unfortunately, that's gonna be your partner, because you're gonna spend the most time with them. So yeah, self-love, so important. Then next up, criticism. So I know criticism is very healthy, especially of course constructive criticism, and it's something that you need in order to grow as a person. But I'm also a firm believer that you learn through your own mistakes, especially when you make them because you thought that initially that was a good idea. And I think that when somebody interferes too much and expresses their own opinion too much, it is really hard to grow as a person. Because imagine you love that person so much, but they constantly tell you, oh, I don't like this, what you're wearing right now. Oh, I don't like your hair. Actually, I don't like your makeup this way. Then because you want to please them so badly, if you're a pleaser type of personality, which I am, then you're constantly gonna be like, oh, you know, you're right. Actually, let me just change what I'm wearing today. Let me just change my makeup. And you're not expressing your own ideas, you're not expressing your own style. And this is just a minor example, of course, but this is also the case for choosing a type of education or choosing a house or whatever, just important decisions in your life. If you rely too much on your partner and you take their criticism into account more than your own ideas, then that's gonna be a problem. And that has definitely happened to me in the past, where I relied too much on other people's opinion. So now that I'm single, I can just be like, you know, what do I think about this? And by the way, this does not mean that I don't listen to criticism of others, but I don't rely solely on what the other person has to say anymore. And I think that is really important. That is growth for sure. These raccoon patches are a little bit weird because they're not the normal eye shape, like the normal patches. I think it's because these are also supposed to be multifunctional patches, so cheek patches and forehead patches and chin patches, but it kind of results in them sliding off my face all the time and it kind of looks weird. But I wanted to use them today because I wanted to stick with a pink theme for Valentine's Day. So yeah, I think they're about right now. Not really, but you guys have to deal with it. I can also put another one of these patches on my forehead, and let's use this one on my chin. And now on to discover who you really are. So oftentimes when you're in a relationship, you're automatically gonna take over somebody's interest or habits, and this is something that happens very gradually. I'm not saying that this is bad whatsoever. Like, it's really nice when it comes to, for example, music taste. Like, you're starting to date somebody and then all of a sudden you also get the same interest. Or when it comes to food, they allow you to experience new things and try out new dishes that you would have never tried out before. But because you love this person so much, you're like, oh, you know what, I might actually want to taste and experience what they love. Let me just try this new dish, and you start loving it. But this can also have negative outcomes, and just like with the clothing example that I just mentioned, it can also prevent you to discover who you really are. And oftentimes I see, not only when it comes to myself and my own journey, because yes, I've definitely experienced this. I've changed so much coming out of my relationship, like my first long-term relationship. After that, this chin patch was not a good idea. Okay, let's just ditch that. But when I first came out of my first long-term relationship, I changed so much as a person. I could just expand who I was. So I hope that when you're single, especially when you're newly single, you can remind yourself of that. Now you don't have anybody telling you, oh, that's not who you are, I don't want you to change. No, you can change into whoever you want to be. And then last but not least, no heartbreak. So this one obviously is so obvious. I mean, come on, when you're single, you cannot experience heartbreak, or at least not the type of heartbreak we are talking about right now. And I think that, you know, heartbreak, it's just a kind of side effect of love. And when you truly love somebody, then, you know, when ultimately it doesn't work out, then at least you had those amazing experiences together. And I think you should always be grateful for what you had. Even though they are not currently in your life anymore, try to look at the positive aspect of the relationship that you once shared. And on top of that, never let the idea of heartbreak prevent you from starting a relationship in the first place, because, you know, that's not worth it. I definitely don't advise you to live a life run by fear. But on the other side, on the flip side, I do think that love is something so vulnerable, and especially heartbreak is something that some of us, including myself, cannot take at all times. Sometimes you're at a point in your life where you're just like, you know, I can't deal with another heartbreak anymore. My heart just can't handle this. And then it's good if you can acknowledge that and prevent yourself from experiencing that in the first place, not for the rest of your life, but for a short period of time, and be like, okay, first I need to heal, and then I can take on this whole new set of emotions that come with a new relationship and eventually a heartbreak if it doesn't work out. But there are moments in your life where you can't handle that, and that is totally fine. And I'm currently at a point in my life where I'm like, I can't handle it right now. I'm not ready for a breakup. I'm not ready to be vulnerable. I'm not ready even to, you know, open myself up and discuss everything about myself and truly let somebody else in. And when you know that up front, then I think it's really nice that you can acknowledge that. And also for the other person, your potential love interest, maybe somebody who you're texting with or who you're just casually dating, if you know deep down that you're not ready for it, let that other person know, because it's not fair to you, but it's also not fair to them either. When it comes to being in a relationship, you should be able to fully open up your heart and to go for it 1000%. I do believe that the best relationships are when you are fully 100% committed, and when you don't have any restrictions, when you can truly open up and be vulnerable. So if you can't do that, stay away from it. And so having said all that, I want to wish all my single ladies out here, and guys, if you're watching, that's totally fine as well, but all my single people out here, I want to wish you a very happy, joyful Valentine's Day. And remember that sometimes love is meant to be, but sometimes being single is meant to be. And maybe for this period in your life, this was meant to be. You're meant to spend this day as Galentine's Day instead of Valentine's Day. And I really truly hope that you can find peace in that. And that was the video of today. I hope it was helpful. I'm sorry for rambling on too much. I always tend to ramble, but yeah, I hope you guys loved this little chit chat. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.